and we tend to be very, very resilient. And when we're anticipating failure or anticipating losses, we underestimate that resilience. So some of the kind of most successful people in our society are people who have failed a lot, because firstly, they're learning from their failure. But secondly, you're probably not going to get very far in life without experiencing failure, right? You're going to have to get rejected. So, on the dating market, it's exactly the same. You're not going to meet probably the exact person for you with all the people out in the world if you don't go and meet some people who are wrong for you in the beginning. It's the same with jobs. So really kind of taking that on board, that actually you're going to do some things, people aren't going to like you, you're going to get negative feedback, it's going to be unfair, you're going to have bad luck. But there's learning in that, and you're still on that journey.
Nice. One bit of the book that I liked was when you referenced the dating market in terms of, I think it was around differences in genders between like risk taking and risk aversion. I wonder if you can kind of just talk about that briefly.
I would love to test this. So one thing that we know for sure at the average level is that women do tend to be more risk averse as compared to men. So men are risk averse, but just less so than women. And I have this theory that men were able to be rejected much more in early years, kind of when they were learning about whether failure is acceptable or not, because they have to ask, women on dates in most cultures. So when you're asking a girl, at 12, 13 years of age, and they say no to you, if you're at a disco, that's going to be terrible. But actually you're learning that it's not that bad. So the second time you ask, the third time you ask, the fourth time that you ask, there will be people who are actually so resilient to this that by the time they're 15, 16, 17, they're not feeling that failure. And we carry that into other domains in our lives, as there are these positive spillovers. So I think by having women not necessarily represented in competitive sports to the same degree as men, so they're not, feeling that they can lose in the same way from early life, and also not being the ones to ask. I'm hoping that's changing, though. I'm hearing that it is, but not being the ones to ask as often as men. That does set the parameter for risk aversion that economists care a lot about.
Yeah. And I guess when it comes to even things like asking for a promotion or asking for a raise, if at the average level there's even a 1% difference in risk aversion between men and women, that at the extremes is going to translate to a significant disparity between people who get promoted and people who don't. And obviously it's all multifactorial, but yeah, it's interesting how that theoretically could be down to that. I have a bunch of female friends who are currently on the dating market, and they always like, I don't like these out. Yeah, I could never ask a guy out because I'll get rejected. And I'm like, come on, like,
are they on dating like on technology, or are they out there like asking people out on the street in the way in the US?
Oh no, everyone's on the apps. Yeah. No one ever asks people out on this. Well, other than a subset of guys that are into that sort of thing.
It still happens in the US though, which always amazes me. Yeah,
well, like, people go up to each other in real life
no way. Have always done it. So the technology is just as big as it is here, but that part of the culture hasn't gone away, which I find fascinating.
Incredible. Have you noticed any other, like, in terms of like risk aversion, does the data say anything on like kind of ethnic minorities versus like white people around like risk taking, risk aversion, that kind of stuff?
Yes. So for countries like the US and the UK, people of color do tend to be less risk averse than white men. And we see
less risk averse.
More risk averse.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the correction. More risk averse as compared to white men. But the male-female divide still stands there. So for example, if you were to compare white women to black men, black men will take more risks as compared to white women. So the gender dimension trumps, but we do see this kind of interaction effect with race and ethnicity. And again, it comes down to, I think, two things. Firstly, early childhood experiences, but secondly, rejections. So white men are much less likely to be told no as compared to all other people. So other genders, other races, other ethnicities.
Right.
And then if you're told no, it becomes rational not to ask again. Right, because you're kind of getting that feedback loop, but actually the reverse is probably true. So in some ways, women and people of color should probably be asking more, because the chances of them then getting a yes is actually going up. But I think that's easier said than done. So there's a huge literature on societal backlash, particularly for women, that talks about what happens if a woman actually speaks up and asks for what she wants in work, and steps outside the stereotype. And there tends to be these negative repercussions. So simply asking for more doesn't necessarily mean that you'll actually get more. So it is really, really complicated. And that's why in today's society, having transparency is really helpful on both sides. It's really helpful for companies because they can pay attention to, are they allowing, really talented individuals fall short for reasons that have to do with kind of these embedded stereotypes that they're not seeing. But at the individual level, when we have transparency, a lot of the problems go away. So both for women and people of color, they feel much better saying, actually, my salary is in the bottom 20%, but I'm knocking it out of the park if I compare it to the rest of the distribution. And why is that? So the certainty of having something to actually point to is really, really powerful. So I really support, the gender pay gap reporting. Yeah. And I now support the idea that we're going to move to having race and ethnicity pay gaps as well.
Oh, interesting. So I've been looking a lot into this stuff. Now that I have a team of 11 people expanding to 20.
Fantastic.
With, I've had a few conversations with the team members around raises, but not as many as I thought I would have. And I think because at least in our team, it's we're just making stuff up as we go along. So we don't have a salary policy or a race policy. How do you even benchmark when someone is writing content for a YouTube video or a YouTube? I don't know. But I want to add in a level of transparency where it's more clear that, okay, this is this level of role. This is a salary for this level of role. And you can ask for a raise at the end of every quarter if you want. And here's how, how should a small business go about being more transparent about this stuff?
I mean, in some ways, I think with a small business, because I'm in this situation at the LC at the moment where I have a team